I think what we've learned in recent history is politicians, you never underestimate their desire to cling to power and to sell anybody out. And, we've seen that domestically, how, members of both parties, but especially the Republican Party, have just, they used to have the pretense of doing things for their constituents. Now it's clear that when they're going, Mitch McConnell will take basically effusive praise to Charles and David Koch and talking more about them and what their issues are versus his own constituents in Kentucky who support a different set of priorities. You've got to kind of wonder and say, well, who's really running the show here, the dog and pony show? And
so does that segue us into domestic issues?
Segue.
Okay, so I want to talk about the police brutality and the stuff going on in Ferguson and across the country, but I think there's other stuff to talk about, right?
Yeah, I think the problem with that is I think that, that really requires a longer amount of time than we have.
Yeah.
Realistically.
Well, let's try and synopsize it. Let's try and make a little synopsis of it. Okay, so obviously there's some injustice going on. The media, or some of the media, is trying to blame, well, the guy was a criminal and they were pursuing him for a robbery, so therefore that's why we shot at him.
Right, and I think it's less important what the facts are. Obviously it's important what they are, but I think it's very unclear, and it doesn't matter. What came out, which was very interesting, and this is also what led in a lot of ways to the Arab Spring and a lot of social movements, is you didn't have the same kind of everybody can be media, everybody can post anything anytime, and these conflicts were always there. In this community, you have a white mayor, white city council, all white officers, and yet it's predominantly African American.
The African American population has risen in the last 20 years.
And it's just very interesting is you have such a divide, and this has been going on for years, and there's so many parts of this country that are like that you have a lot of it's de facto, if not de jure, segregation that goes on, and also with gerrymandering, where you have like these minority districts, which they cram the voters in, but also states they don't necessarily have enough voting power, and this is sort of all of this comes out to the backdrop of an unarmed person getting killed. And it's just awful, and also the response to it was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And just showing again the militarization of the police force, and you have these guys in full body armor,
and they have tanks, right?
Yeah, they have the armor personnel carriers.
Right.
I don't think they have actual
from
tanks.
From a military buff. We all, from laymen and the public, we just think, oh, they're tanks.
They might as well be tanks because nobody has anything to take. They're heavy, they're armored vehicles.
They're basically tanks without the huge cannon.
They don't have the turret.
Right.
But they're wheeled, they're not tracked vehicles, among other things. But they have, this stuff is all.
And we're not talking like the city of Oakland or New York City or LA or San Francisco. We're talking
city of Oakland. We have these things.
Yes, but what I'm saying is bigger cities, you might kind of, especially LA or New York City, you might kind of warrant it. But these are little towns like Ferguson.
Yeah. There's a lot of places, and this is a
rural places, some small suburban towns that have these huge
they have Humvees, and a lot of stuff is surplus, and a lot of it's just also keeping the contractors in business. And post 9/11, where people, and quite rightly, some of the scenarios are like, if there's a breakdown in civil disorder, or if there is a terrorist attack, we might need some of this heavier equipment, but to have a SWAT response or a militarized response to a protest, that's ridiculous and really potentially very oppressive. And I think that's a theme that's come out. I think another theme that's come out, and for me, which is more important than issues, as important, if not more important, it's not only about race, but I keep saying it's about class. And what you see is you have
a big thing.
Inequality, and at some point, what's most problematic to the power structure, if poor whites and poor Latinos and poor African Americans actually get on the same team and start showing up at the polls and really start working together, don't see the distraction, don't see the divisions, try to see past that and try to, how do we work forward? How do we work forward for ending this kind of stuff and moving legislation forward that actually is responsive to people's needs?
Well said. Well said. I think that covers pretty much the whole world and domestically.
Well, that covers what we can cover in this segment.
Absolutely.
Okay? The world is a vast place.
If you want more, check out our website, viralmedianetwork.com. Subscribe to our podcast on SoundCloud. Well said, Tal. And I think that pretty much covers all the aspects of global news and domestic news, at least as much as we can cover on the show.
For today only. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen next week.
And thank you again for listening to the World News and Current Events with Tal Greenberg. You're watching the Sam Jack Podcast. I'm not a professional, but wait, I am. We'll be right back.